One of the biggest scandals in this country's history. Yeah. You can't spend 250 million USD and come out with that.
From the thrill of association football to the excitement of basketball, tennis, athletics, and even emergent sports, we cover it all. Whether it's the Premier League or the latest NBA showdown, we bring you the stories behind the stars.
Getting an opportunity to become a national team coach, he should understand the politics around football.
And don't miss the prayer of the rabbi.
Joe was Zebaut. Oh, Zebaut there.
Zebaut won Chaboke. We're not just about the games, we're about the community.
If you are going to be given this kind of treatment, then you need to be that guy. When I look at him play, he is not it.
Or when it's time for Don't Call Me. Join the conversation as we connect with fans across the country and beyond. Want the latest updates? Send us your thoughts and we'll feature your comments live on air. And remember, we like to hear your predictions for matches and your thoughts in general. Think you know who's going to win? Let us know.
Big shout outs to my YouTube people.
Tune in every Friday at 7 p.m. only on 97.3 City FM. Sports Panorama, where sports come alive. Amen. Sports Panorama, your weekly sports fix. Don't miss out on the action. Sports Panorama. Catch the excitement every Friday.
Looking for the latest buzz in Ghana's entertainment world? Welcome to Ghana Weekend, your ultimate destination for all things creativity and entertainment.
Stay in the loop with breaking news, exclusive interviews, and then insider stories from your favorite creatives and stars. From music, movies, fashion and art, lifestyle and culture, Ghana Weekend brings it all together. Get a daily dose of entertainment, discover new talent, and never miss out on the creativity that defines our vibrant culture.
Stay connected with us across all platforms. Follow us on Instagram with the handle Ghana Weekend, on X Ghana Weekend, on TikTok Ghana Weekend, at Ghana Weekend TV on YouTube for the latest in entertainment, travel, and everything Ghana. Don't miss out. Join the Ghana Weekend family today. Ghana Weekend, where entertainment meets creativity. Visit GhanaWeekend.com now.
Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on Channel 1 Television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, we get the right guests, and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We're live tonight because the microscope is firmly placed on the state-owned enterprises. Barely a week ago, His Excellency the President met with them to define the task ahead, over 175 of them with various levels of performance. My guest tonight is the DG of the State Interest and Governance Authority. He has the mandate to work with the President to make sure that these entities are profitable both financially and socially. He will tell us how he's going to do that in the next hour and a half. Stay with us.
Fire pomudi ni agubio Ghana fu ni age efri say ya your local spices na ya frafra dia ya sankofa natural spice
me dey go me jollof mu ni me still ahodoma emane dance
Stanley the barbecue dey go on
sankofa natural spices and one you use 100% natural
Adofo, mamunye huge mistake. Sankofa natural spices.
After a long flight, Safari Homes gives you the peace to unwind. A short drive from the airport, convenient for all. For nature lovers, Safari Valley Resort is a hidden gem, surrounded by lush greenery and luxury amenities. A place where you can truly escape. Now, for water adventure, Aqua Safari Resort has it all. Jet skis, canoe rides, kayaking, and a visit to the estuary. And for more excitement, Safari Eco Park is the perfect place to get closer to some amazing animals.
Visit Safari World in Ghana, together bringing you closer to nature.
Welcome back. So tonight we're asking, why are so many of our state enterprises not turning a profit? Why have some of them become a drain on our national resources? And what can this government do to turn that around within the next few years? My guest is Professor Kpessa-Whyte. He's the DG of the State Interest and Governance Authority. Prof, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Great. So you organized an event, had the president, the chief of staff, and over 100 and something CEOs for the president to read the Riot Act to them. Now, before we go there, I just wanted to show highlights of some of the things the president said. I'm reading his speech, and he sounds pretty serious. So let's just give you a quick flavor of what the president said when he met these CEOs barely a week ago.
Expect something completely different from you. The reports we would look at next year will be the report for 2024. So really, your performance will show when we do the 2026 review. That will show for 2025. And I'm going to come and sit in that review, and we will mark you based on your performances. And if you're not matching with the pace of the reset agenda, you might be asked to step aside. And so if that adds to the horror movie, that's the intention. Indeed, many of your entities are at their lowest point in the entire history of the Fourth Republic. Ladies and gentlemen, the era of impunity, mediocrity, and financial recklessness must end today. Loss-making SOEs will no longer be tolerated. They will be swiftly reformed, they will be merged, privatized, or shut down. Corruption, procurement fraud, and financial mismanagement will be prosecuted strictly, and boards that rubber stamp poor decisions will be replaced.
So very clear words from the president, just 13th March. Now, also at that event was the Minister of Finance, Kazelatu Fossen. This was a couple of days after presenting the budget, I believe, and he was also very serious. He highlighted some of the poor performances of some of these state enterprises.
Mr. President, this one surprises me. Even the alcohol-making company is making losses. Graphic Communication Group also saw a consecutive losses. The strategy will include capacity building initiatives to strengthen leadership and operational efficiency. The second will be the enhancement of corporate governance training to ensure strict regulatory compliance in all state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprises must prepare annual accounts no later than 2 months at the end of each financial year. State-owned enterprises must submit audited financial statements to the minister within 4 months after the end of their financial year. Moving forward, the Ministry of Finance will be working closely with SIGA to ensure strict compliance of this regulatory requirement.
So that was Dr. Kazelatu Fossen, Minister of Finance, also painting a picture. We have other views we'll bring to you later. So, Prof. Kpessa-Whyte, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Bernard.
It's good to be here.
Yes.
So, why did you accept this job?
I mean, look, we are all interested in making sure that Ghana becomes a better place, right?
Okay.
And it's an honor to be asked to play my part in doing this. And I have to accept it because if I am successful, then obviously it puts Ghana on a better path towards growth, progress, and opportunities for everybody. And I am quite confident that this task is not unsurmountable. This is a task we will definitely ride over and deal with it. And how to measure us will be to look at the current benchmark of all the indicators we are discussing in the media, or we've been discussing in the media, against what will be produced 2026 by this time when we decide to have similar discussions on the performance of the state-owned enterprises and other state entities in the country.
The SIGA role was not as high profile many years ago, but it looks to me as if in the past few years it's become more prominent. And then with what the president did with you, it's made it even more serious because now he's telling SOEs that if you don't perform, I'll either merge you or I'll dissolve you. So in a sense, he's raised the profile of the role in just that one meeting.
Yes, and actually that is what it's supposed to be. I mean, if you look at the SIGA Act, the powers that are granted SIGA, our SOEs have no reason to run the businesses recklessly.
Okay.
Their only option is to actually introduce corporate governance principles and ensure that, one, they grow very well, and two, they make sure that they create value. And then, of course, also to make sure that they enhance their overall, operations and decision-making processes.
Okay.
I think what SIGA is expected to do is to be this umbrella body, oversighting and ensuring that the required performance from these SOEs are adhered to, that they are also able to meet their targets based on whatever indicators are signed upon or signed on in their performance contracts and so on and so forth. The Act requires, the Act together with other acts, the Public Financial Management Act, for instance, requires that many of these SOEs submit their accounts to SIGA on a regular basis, not just their accounts, but other reports as well, in terms of their performance, in terms of their, even their human resource and other operational issues to SIGA on a regular basis. And out of that, that is an exercise in transparency. Out of that, SIGA is able to determine whether they are operating within the framework of good governance, good corporate governance, and is also able to red flag things before they even turn into crisis. And so the president is basically bringing the attention of all the SOEs and their heads, in this case the CEOs and the director generals and everything, to an institution that hitherto has been in the margins, sort of. And this is not surprising because if you recall, during the campaigns, the president was quite categorical in terms of his position on SOEs. I mean, he talked about the fact that SOEs will be reformed, will be realigned to at least break even and make transition to making profit. And that was, in fact, number 26 of the social contract that he put out. And so this event basically was to also signal to the Ghanaian public that this is a man who means his words. He was not willing to take the mandate given to him for right at all. And I think he made that clear also in the speech that he does not intend to betray the trust that Ghanaians have reposed in him. But more importantly, I saw his speech as matching orders, as telling all of us, my colleagues, myself, and everybody else who was in that room that, look, there will be clear indicators around which you'll be judged or your performance will be measured. And if you fall below any of these indicators or your performance is not meeting any of these indicators, the door will be open for you to basically exit so that somebody else who can do this.
We'll come to that. I just wanted to understand the difference between SIGA and what has existed in the past, because based on the chart you prepared for us, there's been State Enterprises Commission, which we know. Then there's also been Divestiture Implementation Committee.
Yes.
So in 2019, the SIGA Act was passed. How different is SIGA from those things that were there before?
Okay, so there is a sense in which all of them have been basically meshed into SIGA. Prior to SIGA, many of these SOEs were oversighted by different ministries. So there are some like GEHOC and others sitting under trade, right? There are quite a number of them sitting under finance, others sitting under agri, and so on and so forth. What SIGA brings to the table now is like, okay, now we bring all these entities together. Though they still have policy oversight from the ministries, operations and performance-wise, now SIGA has to be more or less like the shareholder of all these, if you like, companies, and ensure that they deliver value for money for the states and by extension to the Ghanaian citizenry, right? And this was actually out of some studies that, was conducted, largely financed by the World Bank, that identified that the fragmented oversight was not very helpful, right? And a lot of them were also, not turning out any dividends at all. A lot of them were operating losses. But of course, the elephant in the room, for the most part, has also always been the political interference or political interventions in many of these SOEs. And so the intention is to create some kind of institution that will provide an oversight and also help, or if you like, force them to remain strictly within the boundaries of good corporate governance. And by so doing, make sure that their decisions are based on evidence, their decisions are of sound judgment, and out of that, the outcome will be good
so
performance.
By changing it from a commission to a governance authority, substantially, what does that mean?
So it wasn't really a mere change necessarily, because DIC, that is the divestiture, was largely, I think it was under Ministry of Finance those days.
I thought it was trade.
Was it trade?
One of the two, possibly.
Yeah. Largely was basically the institution that was responsible for, if you like, holding all the state's assets that are literally defunct, that are also being divested, right? And or putting them on privatization or any other means that could allow them to have some life later on. And so they've done a lot of work. But then also there are also the state enterprises that were under SEC, that is the State Enterprises Commission, that were operating and were either, breaking even or making losses or whatever the case may be. But they were not turning out any audited accounts. Everything remained at their level prior to 2016, right? And so SIGA was more or less like bringing all these things together into one space. What is known about SIGA, based on the recent discussions, has always been the fact that they are about state-owned enterprises that are actively operating, whether making losses or making profits, right? But the other side that is less known about SIGA also has to do with the other state entities like the Pualugu Tomato Factory, the Akwetia Diamond Mines and others. They are all under SIGA, right? And they have been put on divestiture. So if, for instance, all the processes have been completed, any of them could be put out there for whatever life it will have thereafter, maybe private or public-private partnership or JV or whatever the case may be. And so you could see that the mandate of all these entities, that is the divestiture and SEC, has been enhanced and realigned properly to kind of focus where the state's interest should be.
So there are, how many entities are we talking about?
So under SIGA, we have 175 entities in total.
175?
175 in total.
Wow.
And we call them the specified entities, right? And
specified entities? Specified entities.
Now, there are three categories of this, right? There are those we call, of course, the state-owned enterprises, SOEs, right? Which, are 53 in number, right? And then we have those that we call the joint ventures, right? The joint venture companies. These are entities where the state has some shares, and either private individuals or some other companies also have some shares in them. Those ones are 47 in total, and they constitute about 27% of the total number of entities that are...
47 joint venture companies?
That's correct.
53 SOEs?
Yes. And then 75 other state entities.
Wow.
Now, these other state entities are institutions that usually are either regulatory or service providing purely, DVLA, National Service, Food and Drugs Authority. In fact, even Bank of Ghana, and the Ghana Commercial Bank, they are all within some of these categories as well. So these are the 75 entities that SIGA has some relationship with.
So an example of SOE will be what? ECG?
So an example of SOE, which is like fully owned state entity, would be like ECG. In more recent times, the Consolidated Bank of Ghana,
VRA?
Yes, Ghana Water, Ghana Ports and Harbour, and so on and
so forth. They are all state-owned enterprises. So does that mean that they are supposed to be profitable? Or it depends on their mandate?
It depends on their mandate. Some of them, it could be purely profitability. Others, it could be dual mandates. I mean, profits and sometimes public service or social service to the public.
So like water?
Like water. There is a sense in which water company is expected to turn out profit, but they're also expected to provide services to Ghanaians and at least break even.
But CBG is a bank, so it has to do what a bank does.
Absolutely.
So that's the category.
That's right.
There are 53 of them.
Yes, so within these three categories, and I'm sure you'll see on another slide, within these three categories, you can further unpack them and see that some are commercial, others are less commercial, and so on and so forth, even within one category.
I actually have that slide. The one you call specified entities covered in the last state ownership report.
That's right.
Guys, the one that has 147 in the middle, I just wanted you to show that. Move a few slides ahead. So that has SOEs, JVCs. No, keep moving forward. Keep going. No, keep going. No. You've passed it. You probably didn't have that. Anyway, whatever. From that, I see you have you've broken it down into other JVCs, regulators, subvented agencies, other statutory bodies. Why are those breakdowns important?
Well, it is important because it gives clarity about their mandates and what is expected of them in terms of performance. For instance, if an entity is not expected to, is purely service, for instance, and you are evaluating it largely on the basis of profitability, you probably might be getting the indicators wrong.
I wanted to find the particular slide for you, but I don't think
he passed it.
I think they passed it. Yeah. All right. So now let's look at the states. So what have you inherited? Because I see where you have, for example, between 2016 and 2023, a lot of them didn't even submit audited accounts.
That's right.
All right. And now that seems to be improving. What's the difference between audited accounts and management accounts, and why was the number so low from 2016?
So a bit going back a bit, 2016 actually indicates that this conversation about bringing these entities together go a bit back. I mean, the previous NDC government under Setekpe, Atoforsin and others really were already in conversations about how best we can bring these entities under an umbrella and make sure that we have a clearer oversight. And so 2016, which is the year that NDC left power, the state's ownership report that was prepared in that year, you will notice that only 6 companies or 6 entities signed performance contracts. And the differences between audited accounts and management accounts is simply the fact that the management account is the account that was prepared based on their operations from the entity itself. And of course, the audited account is the one that goes out to external auditors appointed, I believe, by the Auditor General to look through the books and eventually validate them, if you like.
And so, in 2016, only 6 entities signed performance contracts.
Yes. And you see how that number has grown over the years.
So now we have 73 have signed, 73 have signed performance contracts, and also audited accounts have improved from 2 to 9. I think it's 82 now.
That's right.
And the management accounts from 16 to 65. All right. I wanted to show, so yes, viewers, this is what we are talking about. So basically, the latest figures we have are for 2023.
Yes, these are
year
figures,
ending.
Yes, these are figures drawn from the 2023 operations of the entities. The report was completed in August 2024, right? Now, the next report we will be discussing will be done on the data from 2024, right? And that probably will be ready August this year. I hope I'm right, August this year, right? And so that will more or less be like the final verdict on what has happened with SOEs and other entities during the MPP era, right? Now, the next one after that will be on the data from 2025.
Which is why the president
That's
said
why the president was
next year.
That's right.
Will be the first year of the people he has appointed.
That's right.
So we don't have the last year of NPP yet.
Not
that
will
come out this year.
And keep in mind that is an election year. That was an election year.
So,
so the picture might even be more of a horrible situation that we currently.
All right, guys, move to the next slide. I wanted to discuss something. So there's profit stroke surplus. Well, no, this is not what I want. I just wanted to. No, I don't know what's happening. No, go back.
It's a table, right?
Yes, go back. There's a table I wanted to show. SOEs, JVCs, minority OSEs. I think the people didn't answer all your slides. They said they took some out. Can I go? I think, but do you have the full presentation? Okay, let me try it because I needed to ask you a question on it. Not. Okay, just give me a minute. So we are trying to ask some questions based on what
you want is
good.
Yeah.
There you are. This one. This is what I really wanted to talk about. 53 SOEs, 16 JVCs, 15 minority. What does minority mean?
Government has less shares.
Minority. So this is
it's a JVC, but government has less shares in them.
And then what is OSE?
OSEs are the other state entities like National Service, GTEC, Food and Drugs Board. I mean, and others.
Right. So this is the issue. For the SOEs of the 53, 35 are making a profit, and 18 are making a loss.
That's right. As far as the 2023 State of the Ownership report is concerned. Yeah.
For the joint ventures of the 16, 6 are making a profit, 10 are making a loss.
Yeah.
Then of the minority shareholder companies, 15 of them, 11 are making a profit, 4 are making a loss.
That's right.
And then for the 63 other state entities, 42 are making profit, 21 are making a loss. My first comment to you is, it looks like the less government is involved, the more profit is made. Because this 73% is the highest. It means that when government is not involved, it's better. When government is involved, it's not good. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair assessment, but that's probably just one of the many factors. I mean, at the heart of some of this is really the question of governance, really. Minority, entities with minority shareholding clearly are the ones where government interference or government's influence in the decision-making processes are far less compared to entities where government has majority share or government is completely owning it. And so there is a sense in which one can argue that, yes, when you have the the private sector or private individuals holding most of the shares, you see that there is some awareness among, let's say, the decision-making arena, that's the management of those entities, and that translates into either profit or surplus, depending on which entity it is.
My problem is that even though a lot more seem to be making profit than losses, the percentage profit or surplus is a bit lower. Does that mean that the loss-making companies are bigger than the profit-making entities?
Yes.
Is that a correct conclusion to draw?
That is right. And I mean, the usual suspect is the usual suspects are in the energy sector. You will see from, one of the other slides, when you look at the composition of the different entities, that a large majority of those that are big and huge in terms of assets are in the energy sector. And once those ones are not turning out profits, it then affects the overall portfolio or the overall performance of the SOEs.
We'll come to that. I wanted to walk through it logically. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about the slide I have. So if you see, for example, this one.
Yes.
It's not very clear here, but it looks like energy SOEs are the most,
58.7%, yes.
So of the percentage breakdown of these SOEs, a lot of them are in the energy sector.
That's correct.
So you're talking what? GMPC, VRA, ECG.
BOST, ECG.
And a lot of them are not making profit.
Yes. Apart from Bui, and I believe, I think apart from Bui.
And Ghana Gas.
And Ghana Gas. The rest are really struggling, literally.
Apart from Bui and Ghana Gas, the rest are making losses.
Yeah.
There's something I wanted you to comment on here. So the SOE asset base in relation to Ghana's nominal GDP, 40%.
40%.
That's serious.
SOEs control quite a chunk of our entire GDP.
40% value?
Yes, in terms of assets. And if these assets are actually creating more value, the economy will expand. It will mean more jobs, right? More opportunities.
Wow.
But you can see how they are basically drawing down, in terms of their ability to expand and grow so that job opportunities can be created.
And the problem is here, your total revenue is 103 billion, but your total operating expense 105.
Yeah.
So basically, this net loss is because this is either too high or this is too low, correct?
Correct. I mean, look, expenses are a big suspect in many ways. I mean, we need to think of whether SOEs should be, as it were, have the free hand in engaging in what they call the corporate social responsibility. Because when you look at some of them quite closely, you will see that some of their expenditures are really outside of their core mandates, right? And also talk about whether some of the things that they spend on, like maybe expensive travels, for instance, like maybe having an overhang of, people within the establishment whose performance or whose clear job mandate is not really well defined, yet they are paid.
So all those things drive cost up?
They drive cost up.
So will your focus be more raising revenue or reducing?
Both. They should find alternative sources of, raking in more revenue. They should diversify their revenue sources, whilst at the same time bringing down their operational cost as well. And that eventually will translate into some recovery.
Okay, let's look at the SOEs now. So when we talk of SOEs,
This graph only shows you the influence of the energy sector on the entire.
Because that's red.
That's right.
And they are mostly making losses.
That's right.
For the energy sector. Yeah. The green is what? Agric. So agric is profitable, at least for the last quarter. So these are in quarters, I believe.
They are in years, actually.
They are in years.
Yes. So 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023.
So the energy sector is drawing down the SOEs.
Yes. And you know that if we get the energy sector right, there is a sense in which it has a positive spiral effect on all the other sectors, right? If your energy sector is struggling and you can't get your manufacturing right, you can't get your agric right, you can't get all kinds of things really relates to energy. So once we are not getting that right, there is in a sense, it's basically adversely affecting all the other sectors.
There's an interesting point here. 10 SOEs with the most asset base recorded aggregately net loss of 11 billion cedis in the financial year 2023, which surpasses the aggregate net loss of the 53 SOEs in totality.
That's right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So ECG alone in that year was loss of 10 billion, Ghana Water 3 billion.
Yeah.
So the energy sector is a red one.
That's right.
Amazing. Then I think we need to talk about some good news before we start.
So it's not a bad story all the time.
Your best 5 SOEs.
Yeah.
Performance of
in terms of performance, yeah.
Bui Power Authority.
Yes.
And this is from 2019.
2019 to 2023.
They made a profit.
They've been consistently turning out profit and paying out dividends to the states.
So Bui is the best.
Yes. And not that Bui is the best. This is just a list of...
Yeah, because they have 340 average, 340 million average
you have to
profit.
look at the ratios also.
Of course. Yeah, right. Ratio is important.
Yeah.
But on paper, you can say these are the top 5.
Absolutely. In terms of those that are at least giving us some positive news. But we need to talk about this also because these are entities that when you do a much more closer analysis, you begin to discover that there is a little bit of a difference in terms of their decision making. There is a little bit of, corporate adherence to corporate governance culture, and then also compliance to, the various demands or various requirements as far as reporting to SIGA and the ministries that they fall under.
So they behave. That's why they are doing well.
They put up a good behavior and they are doing well.
So Bui is number 1 in that list. Yeah. ESLA, what's ESLA?
One of these energy sector.
ESLA PLC is like a special purpose vehicle for managing the money for some bonds.
That's right.
Repayment.
That's right.
So it's like,
ESLA, you remember the ESLA, President Mahama talks about it a lot, the amount of money left in it before, and then what happened to it subsequently.
But looking at their performance, of course, an SPV, but they are profitable. Number 3 is Ghana Gas.
Yes.
What are they doing right?
Well, again, it comes down to, management, board decisions, right? Adherence to compliance, regulations. Because the things that people need to do are very simple things. Look, why should private sector companies make profits and public sector companies, if you want to call it them so, make losses? When there are human beings managing both of them, it is the cultures that are practiced in both of these entities. In fact, in many African countries, including ours, there is a sense in which people treat state-owned enterprises as though they are a butchered cow, available for everybody to consume, right? If that culture is taken out of their practices, in terms of their governance practices, you will see a lot of major differences in the way they...
But could it be that Ghana Gas, because they don't sell directly to individual consumers, but to maybe state agencies. They are able to recover their money compared to, say, ECG. Of course, there's VRA and Greco who also don't make profit, and they also sell to bulk suppliers, so I can't really say this, but interesting. Then there's Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund.
Yeah. Again, another special purpose.
So that's financial, so they don't have a lot of staff, so they probably just... But state housing is an interesting one.
Yes.
Consistent profit.
And my understanding is that state housing used not to be making profit. If I
so this is positive work they've done.
That's right. So something happened there differently, or something has been happening there differently. That is basically throwing out, some dividends.
And they are building houses for people.
Yes.
So it's like they are providing a social good in addition.
With a commercial value.
So it's not just a paper value profit.
That's right.
TDC is an interesting one.
Yes.
Because this is like a quasi-private entity within a public space.
Public space, yes.
I see. So I see 2 real estate, 2 financial, and then 2 energy.
That's right.
In your top. I'll take a break. When I come back, I'll tell you the worst performing SOEs. As my guest, Professor Kpessa-Whyte, works with us to understand the mandate of SIGA. The president has been very clear. He says they will either be merged or shut down completely if they don't turn a proper profit by next year. So there's a lot of work ahead of us as we get into why our SOEs are struggling so much. This is the point of view. Stay with us.
My name is Ochiame Kwame. I live at the plush Leisure Den Symphonic, a real estate property developed by Whaley Properties, the very developers of Vista Del Mare and the beautiful Alphabet City. So come with me to site. Let me introduce you to your new home, a gated community with 24-hour security in the heart of Sakomono. Behind me is going to be Willow Lane, where elegance will meet tranquility. You are going to be greeted with a 4-bedroom ensuite home with an elevator, swimming pool, children's playground, constant electricity, and many more. But wait, it gets even more interesting for early birds like you. You get a whopping $50,000 discount. Yes, I said $50,000 if you purchase between now and the end of this month. So call us now or visit us. Willow Lane, where elegance meets tranquility.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva cocktail and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. Tonight on The Point of View, we're trying to understand our state enterprises and how well they are doing. My guest is Professor Kpessa-Whyte, who is the, I don't call him CEO, he's the Director General of the SIGA, State Enterprises and Governance Authority. The good news is that some did very well based on the past 4 or 5 years. BUI, ESLA, GNGC, which is Ghana Gas, of course, Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and then SHC and TDC did very well. Now, this is the problem though. The guys that have consistently not done well, I mean, look at that. We have SOEs, we have OSEs, and we have JVCs. So basically, the problem is not just one category. So when we talk of SOEs, already explained who they are. These are state-owned enterprises. Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing, for the past 4 years, losses throughout. Ghana, what is GMPA? What company is GMPA? Ghana National Procurement Agency.
Yeah.
What do they even do? I mean, we have to find out. Then there's Ghana Water Company. I'm a bit concerned about Ghana Water Company because the losses are also very big. You are having like 669 million, 2.6 billion, 939 million, 3.3 billion, average of 2.27 billion in losses.
And I'm sure if you speak to them, they will tell you that over the years, their operational cost had gone up, largely also because of Galamsey. They have had to spend more in acquiring or buying the chemicals they need to treat water and get the water into our homes. But some also have to do with the fact that they just, along the value chain, water treated gets spilled out. But all those things are not costed and paid for by anybody.
And they may not be able to charge commercial rate because water is seen as a social good.
Yes.
But I think what Galamsey point is right, because when I interviewed Clifford Brahma, he used to tell me that the cost of treating water is really gone high because of Galamsey. So this is understandable, but we have to get into the details.
And I think the point also is that now people need to understand that Galamsey's adverse impact is not just about the environment, the digging of the soil and turning cocoa trees upside down and polluting just the rivers over there, but ultimately how the water gets into our homes, even in the urban centers, drives up costs. And when that cost goes up, it affects the performance of these SOEs. And then when the issue gets into the media, we all cry why their cost profile is escalating.
Then there's also Tema Oil Refinery, which I find pretty strange because, of course, we've heard this before, but in the energy, SOEs, Tema Oil Refinery, look at the numbers. 331 million loss, 539 million loss, 129 million loss, 1.6 billion loss. But what are they doing? It's like they are just... That's crazy. But the Tor issue is not new. Yeah. What have you found? Any quick comment on Tor?
No, well, I mean, I think what we know about Tor is just the usual stories that are almost always out there. The question is, what value has Tor been adding to its operations since, I mean, for some time, at least for the last 4 years, what value have they really added to their operations? And we don't seem to have seen much. Now, look, SIGA has, beyond the state ownership report, SIGA also does another report. I think that report is yet to really come out, which is called the AGIPA report. And that one goes beyond the financial analysis.
Okay.
As the SOR, the state ownership report, normally dives into their financial issues, right? The AGIPA report goes beyond the financial issues to look at the institutional strength of these institutions, the institutional performance of these institutions, and of course also the governance structure and governance performances. Because the negatives we are seeing here, or the loss we record, or these companies record, do not just come out of the blue. They emanate from decisions that could either be poor or not well thought through, or not based on science, or not based on data, right? And so clearly they need to go beyond just what has been reported in their books per the audited accounts and begin to understand more broadly.
So there are reports beyond just the financial.
That's right.
But the financial is important. So the top 5 loss-making entities under SOEs have listed them there. But under the OSE, which you call the other state enterprises, you have Highway Authority making losses, Northern Development Authority making losses, GBC, Maslock. Any commentary there?
Clearly, they are spending more than they have budgeted for over the years. I mean, they, by their very nature, are not able to maybe rake in their own IGF enough to be able to meet their operational costs. And some of these are very important, I mean, agencies. Highway is extremely important. We know about Northern Development Authority. GBC, I mean, its relevance is obvious. And then, of course, Maslock has been a vehicle for providing a lot of loans and financial resources.
It's more like a vehicle for political patronage.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Would you be bold enough to say some of these entities should not even exist? Or you are not yet there, you haven't done enough work?
I think, so part of what we actually... Part of the reasons why we did the Kpessa events is because there is a study that is currently being undertaken by SIGA into many of these entities, particularly the SOEs.
Yeah.
Currently, it's covering 16 of these SOEs, right? And the reason I'm mentioning this study is that it is intended to unearth a lot of the things, the root cause of many of these things that the things that are really driving these, SOEs and the other entities into negatives as far as their operations are concerned.
Okay.
Once that study is completed, we will get a clearer and fuller picture of the situation, and then be able to present to the president the findings and then the recommendations as to whether some of them should exist, some of them should be merged, some of them should go public-private, or whatever route we will recommend. Yeah.
So under OSC's Highway Authority is making serious losses. Northern Development Authority, GBC, and then Maslock, not surprising at all. Now there's then JVCs, which I find interesting, joint venture companies, private public. So you are hoping that this will be better run. Intercity STC, consistent losses over the period, 2019 to 2023. 33 million CD loss. Metromass, 24 million average. Vodafone, 884 million average loss. Indeed, in 2023, it was 1.8 billion.
Yes.
What's going on with Vodafone? And then, so let's deal with the transport. People are looking for, I don't understand. How does STC and Metromass, how do they make losses? It doesn't make sense.
Mismanagement. It comes down to the governance issues. A few years ago, STC, I think, under President Mahama's first term, STC was actually turning now dividends, was paying profits, right? And I believe, I think, I forgot the full name, but I think he's late now. But you can see that some, energy was injected into the operations of STC, and it was quite visible, it was quite effective and efficient. Between 2016 and now, we have seen the whole table turn completely upside down with, STC basically running losses. These losses are results of human decisions, period. If people put in charge of these entities make it a point that we will turn these things around and turn out profit and give quality service, they will do it. When people decide that this is a fat cow that has been basically butchered and we are all supposed to chop the meat, we will see negativity, we will see, them make losses.
I'm surprised at STC because we have worked with them in the Heritage Caravan.
We see them driving you around.
And we've seen them acquire new buses. And the routes are very clear. So I'm not sure why they are making losses.
So the why will become obvious for us, particularly when we do the AGPA reports.
Or are they possibly, because it's transport and it's state-owned, charging lower rates than their competitors, and therefore their revenue is not able to match up to their costs? Because, as you said, some of them are providing social goods.
But look at all the JVs over there. They have something in common. For most of them, who is the largest shareholder?
It will be government still.
Absolutely.
So when government has a bigger role, it affects. Because MTN
at least
is
majority shares, not largest, but majority
Vodafone.
shares.
Vodafone is basically, I can't believe it, 1.4 billion loss, 358 million, average of 884 million CD loss over the period. Accra Abattoir, why do we even have an abattoir company?
So you need to know that you need to keep in mind that some of these things are actually legacies. Legacies from several
why do we need an abattoir?
A decision needs to be taken, and that is why we are actually actively interested in the study.
Is abattoir something government needs to take part of? I don't understand.
Government is in the business of killing animals for citizens to get meat. And
we have a lot of good abattoirs. We don't need government involvement. Cocoa processing company is not new. I'm worried that both CPC and PBC are making loss because President doesn't seem to be that. You're a company that essentially procures cocoa beans on behalf of the state. Why are you making losses in look at them, PBC, in the tens of millions of CDs?
So PBC, we engaged PBC recently on their issues as far as their loss position is concerned. And one of the things that became clear, and I have no reason to doubt their narrative, is that they are actually struggling with a legacy debt. And that has not been. As we speak, I believe that they have been in court because either their loans, they have defaulted and their creditors have taken them to court, and their properties are currently under siege. You know, so they actually came to SIGA to plead so that we could, make a case to the minister for them so that at least they could be giving some.
This is PBC.
Yes, I think so.
Why
yes.
is CPC making losses?
CPC, I haven't gone into their particular issues yet.
But you are producing. I mean, you get it. This is a state-owned cocoa processing company.
Yeah.
And the state buys cocoa beans and sells. Yeah. And you probably have a first right of refusal to get some of the beans. How on earth are you making losses throughout? You know?
Decisions,
it's amazing.
Governance decisions, it comes down to that.
What is Ghana Libya Arab Holdings?
So, you know, there are some entities or some establishments that the Ghanaian government and then the Libyan government have shares in.
Jointly set up?
Exactly.
Okay.
One of them is actually this hotel that has been recently changed to
Lancaster.
Okay. Exactly, yes. Okay. So I think a number of those things.
And they're also making losses?
Well, that's
and then the Ghana Women Fund, which I've never heard about.
So we just had a meeting with the Ghana Women Fund today, actually, and very interesting meeting. The Ghana Women Fund, when it was established, apparently was doing very well.
Wow.
It was providing loans and credits to women. So literally, it was set up with almost the same objective around which the Women Development Bank is emerging now. And my understanding is that they were doing fairly well until, of course, extraneous circumstances and other internal circumstances impinge on them, and they also started, going down.
Just a final comment. TOR, my view on TOR is that it probably is a victim of not just political interference, but also the structure of the industry. Because when you have large BDCs who control the market by bringing in finished products, even if you produce crude in Ghana, there's a certain way in which they will not get access to the crude to refine. So even though they've employed people, until there's a policy to give them access to proper crude, and then there's an investment in their...
TOR, there is a sense in which TOR is just a reflection of our general problem.
Yeah.
Right? We have a factory that can refine, but we are more comfortable importing.
Exactly.
And this cuts across many industries. I mean, I always tell my students that, look, if you want to see the true picture of why we have huge unemployment and why it's going to be difficult for us to solve the unemployment problem, take a car and go and sit around the ports and just see how many ships are moving into Ghana. And what are they bringing? They are bringing us finished goods, from toothpicks through toilet roll to everything else. Now, every time you buy any of this, you are actually outsourcing jobs elsewhere. Your peers in the countries where these things are coming from, you are putting them in jobs, whilst you are putting yourself out of jobs. But there must be a deliberate policy to make Ghanaian production, manufacturing a priority. But we also must develop the taste for Ghanaian-made stuff, right? Because if the taste for Ghanaian-made stuff is not there, then, I mean, which investor or who would like his money to be put in there when the money could completely go?
All right. Let me move to a few more things here. I'm not interested in this. I wanted to show... Okay, go back.
Let's look at that.
Yes. No, before that, this one.
Yes.
SOEs with negative equity. So this is different from financial
these
performance.
Ones, they don't. In fact, they literally don't exist. They are not supposed to exist. Because with negative equity, the implication is simply that your debt levels are such that even if we sell your entire
it's gone into
assets,
capital. So your capital cannot...
completely. If we sell everything of yours to pay your debt, we'll still go and borrow more money before we'll be able to completely pay your debt. So really, they are just in appearance.
Wow.
So the question is, should they continue to exist? And I'm sure the studies we are conducting will eventually...
And now we have Airtel Tigo with a negative equity position of minus, also almost 600 million. Because the asset is 1.6, their liabilities are almost 2 billion.
Look at Ghana Water.
Ghana Water is in a negative equity position of 3.8. Amazing. And then you have PSC Tama Shipyard, 21, PMMC. This is troubling. And then TOR as well.
Yes. So
Ghana Post.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if it wasn't for the fact that these are in strategic sectors, they probably don't even have to exist.
Really?
If they were commercial entities entirely, they would not even exist.
That's right. And of course, the other way to look at it is that if these were private sector entities, would they continue to
That's
run?
the question.
They would really have been folded up long ago.
I'm concerned about the road fund and then highway authority showing up in these things. I don't understand whether it's that, because why is road fund on this list? You know, I don't understand. Maybe they can come and explain themselves. Then also a previous list where you had the Highway Authority also showing some losses. Why is Highway Authority making losses?
So, you know, some of the whys will come out of our deep dive studies. Some will also come out of our AGIPA studies. And for the most part, the questions are legitimate. But the best people to actually answer some of these whys are actually the entities themselves. Okay. I mean, where we sit, one is careful not to make it look as though you are basically throwing these entities under the carpet. In fact, when you meet some of them and they begin to explain to you the circumstances under which they operate and the demands on them. For instance, many of these entities may come to do performance contract negotiations. You have benchmarks, you have key targets for them to perform. You are monitoring them regularly on a quarterly basis and to ensure that they stay within their... All of a sudden, something happens and then they got out of gear, completely out of your performance contract framework. Why? Because maybe they have been asked by government to perform a particular service, which they haven't budgeted for, which is not in the contract, but they haven't actually costed that particular service so as to ask the government, okay, we will do it, but pay us, right? They go perform the service, and because they are not paid, it sits on their books. And if that happens a number of times, they run into the kind of situation.
Let me make a quick correction. So these 8 entities all have negative equity position, but some of them are still making profit. So I need to make the point. So the negative equity is this column. So all of them are making. Now, notwithstanding this, PMMC made a profit, as did the road fund. So that's a point of correction I need to make.
Yeah.
But Airtel Tigo had both negative equity and loss. GMP, negative equity and loss. Ghana Post, negative equity and a slight profit. Road fund, negative equity, but made a profit, net profit. Of course, profit depends on what type of profit. Is it operating profit? Is it profit after tax? So profit is very broad. PSC Shipyard, both equity negative, profit is a loss. PMMC, negative equity. And this is the main point. TOR. Can you imagine? It's unbelievable. Both, it's crazy. I wanted to go to a few more and then show a few things. So these are the
big boys.
The top 10 SOEs by asset base. Yeah. So right, the top 10 SOEs by asset base. So our biggest SOE by asset will be VRA. Then there's ECG. Then there's Cocoa Board, GMPC, Bui Power Authority, Ghana Gas, NEDCO, Gapoha, CBG, and Ghana Water. So these are the top 10.
Yes.
When you put them together in terms of their profit, they make an aggregate loss of 11 billion cedis.
That's right.
So apart from Bui and Ghana Gas, all these guys are making losses.
And check the assets they control and check their contribution to the portfolio, the SOE portfolio.
So let's go through that. 82%. Wow.
That's just 10 of them.
Wow.
If you limit it to only the SOEs, 10 out of 53. So even
they control 83% of the asset
so even
base.
if all the other 43 are making profit and everything, when you put the aggregate together, and these ones are not making profit.
So if you are asked for prioritization of which ones we should work hard on,
these ones, yes.
Because they are very big.
These ones. Every one of them in the energy sector and these particular ones.
So let's go through this. Apart from Bui and Ghana Gas, based on 2023 results, all these guys are making losses.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That is serious.
Yes.
Wow. You know, the Minister of Finance mentioned ECG and Cocoa Board specifically.
Yeah.
But VRA, I'm surprised. Why are they making losses?
I don't know.
And these guys seem to have a lot of money. They have GMPC Foundation, they have sponsored Black Stars in the past. They didn't have a lot of money, yet they are making losses. I don't get it.
GMPC is in trouble, so they need to be... I mean, I think that recently I was talking to one of the members of the management there, and they said they have some structural and systemic problems that needs to be dealt with in order for them to be able to improve their performance. So again, the entities have a clear sense of some of the issues that are, having bearings on them. And I think that once we are able to complete, especially two things, our deep dive study on the 16 entities, and then of course also our governance studies, which relates to the AGIPA report, we will be in a position to say with clarity and maybe with scientific certainty what exactly each of them is going
How
through. That is
important is a CEO based on your work, not even at SIGA?
Yeah.
How important is a CEO? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Is it the CEO or the board? Who is responsible for this? If I were to press you generally, not specific company, but the fact that 10 large organizations are making losses, would it more the CEO or the board?
Well, well, of course, this is my first year in this thing.
Forget about SIGA. Well, I'm asking you based on your work as an academic.
It's the board.
It's the board.
It's the board. Because what it is that the CEOs are supposed to enforce decisions made by the board. The boards are supposed to put the CEOs in check so that they don't go, doing things haywire. In fact, in some cases, which is actually different in our case, the CEOs are recruited by the board, right? And the board members themselves are recruited through a competitive open process, right? And so decision making, you know where you are coming from, you know how you have been given targets, you need to meet the targets in order to be able to, continue to earn your keep. Otherwise, you'll be kicked out. So I am quite confident that President Mahama is going to really put boards that will manage the CEOs and the heads of entities in a manner that will keep everybody in check with clear targets in mind. And so when he spoke about he will be there, during the performance contract negotiations, and he will be there during the 2025 or 2026 SOR, that State Ownership Report, he meant it. And in my view, he was using that particular occasion at Kempinski to send a clear signal to everybody, every one of us, that look, this is not going to be business as usual, and that everybody will have to be reined in, because the losses we report are losses emanating out of human decisions.
So we can say bad corporate governance
is responsible.
Is the main factor.
It's responsible.
And then that will mean that either the boards are ineffective or not being given the space to supervise management in the way they are supposed to.
Or they themselves just have not developed the self-awareness that the responsibility that rests on their shoulders is big. And look, we have seen a few instances where board members managed to get the entity to use the entity fund to insure them against, reckless decisions.
Serious?
Yes. So if the entity is insuring you against the possibility of making a decision that is quote unquote reckless or has adverse implications for the general population, then the board sitting there had no reason to actually, make any sound decision, because you are insured. If anybody takes you, the board, to court, and the court finds you guilty of, making a decision that harms, let's say, Ghanaian citizens or anything, you walk free, because the entity will have to. Entity has already insured you, and the insurance company will pay. So you will notice in the President Mahama's speech that he was quite clear that the practice where entity funds are used to indemnify boards and board members ceases that day, that last week Thursday in Kempinski. And we expect that no entity, no SOE, the JVs, depending on what structure it is, a shareholding structure, and then no OSE will insure any board member or any CEO. So that people should be mindful of the fact that if my actions here cause major adversarial impact to the society or even create any problem whatsoever, you will be held personally liable.
I have another break. Before I go, just something to reflect on. Since President Mahama took over, we've heard of new CEOs. So I think there's Kenzo, Engineer Kpessa-Whyte, Randy Abe. There was a change of guy.
Yes.
Yes. GMPC is somebody who's like they remove. Initially it was Bauer, but somebody else came.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that CEOs are known. We don't know who the boards are.
Yes.
But from what you're saying, the board is probably more important. Absolutely. Because they will determine the strategic direction.
Absolutely.
So there must be more care taken in choosing those guys.
Yes.
So it's not just the CEO who comes in the media.
Yeah.
It's the guys who oversee his work.
Absolutely. So the whole of that structure need to be looked at. And when you read President Mahama's speech and when you engage him on this, you get a clear sense that he doesn't want us to continue doing the same thing and expect that we'll get a different results. So people are complaining the boards are delaying what's going on. It is because there is a bit of calculation and careful analysis of what it will take to compose a board that will provide the kind of corporate governance leadership that is required for these entities to operate without us falling into, I mean, quote and unquote, the reckless situation we have seen that is showing.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll look at solutions. What can SIGA and government do to turn this around? But these are your top 10 these are top 10 bad boys. I mean,
well, they are good boys, 10 bad.
No, actually, 2 of them are good. Ghana Gas and Bui. 8 out of the 10 are not doing well.
I'm quite confident that in 2026, when we look at this story again, because then we'll be looking at 2025 state ownership reports, right? Yeah. I am quite confident that this story will change, because the story as told as Kempinski in front of many of these SOEs clearly was quite concerning to a lot of them. You could see from the reaction, the comments and everything. And I was very happy that this presentation was done for them to see where they are starting from, because it's like your starting point. And if you are able to actually even break even, that's like a plus. If by 2025 you break even, then the potential to actually make profits subsequently is high. Plus the fact that others are making profit. So you have no reason not to make profit. So I'm quite confident that all my colleagues out there...
We'll take it. When we come back, we'll look at what can be done to turn this around. This is the point of view tonight. We are talking to the DG of SIGA, Professor Michael Kpessa-Whyte, trying to work on a dire situation with our state enterprises. Stay with us.
This March, we invite you to splash in the pool of cultural expressivity and soak yourself in the celebration of indigenous authenticity in our Heritage Month. Join us for the Heritage Month launch on Friday, February 28th, as we kick off a month of unforgettable experiences. Pack your bags for the Heritage Caravan, a week-long adventure across Ghana from March the 2nd to the 9th. Discover the beauty and history of our land. Savor the flavors at the Back to Your Village Food Festival, a culinary extravaganza on March 29th and 30th. Taste the essence of Ghana. Tune in to the Heritage On Air series on 97.3 CDFM and Channel 1 TV. Feel the rhythm of our music, journey through our religious history, and indulge in indigenous Ghanaian food. Join us to celebrate our heritage this Heritage Month, where every moment is a story. Only on Channel 1 TV and 97.3 CDFM.
Of their labors, toils of the brave, which have brought return.
Welcome back. Tonight, we're not here to just give you bad news, but, you know, as we always say, a leader's first job is to define the reality. So we need to know where we are. And it's quite clear that our state enterprises are not doing well, whether they are joint ventures, they are minority interest, or SOEs simpliciter. It cuts across. And my guest is saying is governance, corporate governance being the main cause. So let me show you a final quick list. Joint venture companies also, there are about 6 of them with negative equity positions. Basically, when you look at the assets and liabilities and put them together, you have a negative. Intercity STC, negative equity of 11 million. Metro Mass, 131 million negative equity. Vodafone, 2 billion negative equity. Produce Buying, 239 million. ADB, that's shocking. ADB, 102 million negative equity. That's unbelievable. And then, of course, the Women's Fund. Now, I just wanted to come to some of the things I need to clarify. When you read your speech, you said you are going to partner SOEs to help them to be more innovative, look for more revenue sources to perform. So you felt that your relationship with them was horizontal. When I listened to the president,
vertical.
He believes that you, working with somebody in his office, are vertically on top of these guys. So is there a dissonance in what you want?
There is no dissonance at all. I think that it's a matter of how, my particular submissions were framed. I was quite clear in my submissions on what we expect of the the CEOs of the various entities, and I did mention that we will try to work with them in a very horizontal relationship and not necessarily vertical. But I also said, look, we will demand which the Act of SIGA, that's Act 990, requires of us to do. And I think it is horizontal relationship when you continue to submit your various monitoring reports on time, your operational documents on time, and we provide you with feedback, and we are able to give you alerts into situations before you get into a crisis situation. Then we have a horizontal relationship. But when you decide to continue with business as usual approach, and we realize that this is likely to have adverse implications for the overall operation of the entity and by extension affect the government negatively, we will then make sure that we
let me read some of the things the president said.
Yeah.
Many of our specified entities have operated inefficiently for far too long. They have been burdened by waste, underperformance, conflict of interest, and a complete detachment from national interest. Now here's my emphasis. Many of our SOEs have been used as mere instruments for generating personal wealth for persons appointed to positions within the entity. And who are the ones responsible for this? The CEOs, the management and management boards. Some of these have become perennial loss-making, draining public funds. Then it goes on. The era of impunity, mediocrity, and financial recklessness must end. Now here's what he says. The DG of SIGA, you, will ensure that you all comply with your asset declarations. That's number one. Auditor General will submit a list of those who have complied by an agreed cut-off date. Those who fail to comply will be sanctioned, including possible removal. Then he goes on again to talk about what you will do. And that you working with somebody in his office.
Dr. Valerie Sawyer.
So can you explain what he means? I wanted to read that. I have directed SIGA to compile and submit a report to the Senior Presidential Advisor on Governmental Affairs by mid-March each year, detailing all entities that fail to meet the deadline for submission of audited financial accounts. And then he goes on to talk about, to fulfill their mandates, the things that have to be done. So how are you going to work with Valerie Sawyer on this?
So Dr. Valerie Sawyer is in the Office of the President as Presidential Advisor on Governmental Affairs. And let me say, she's been very, very helpful as far as our program at Kpessa-Whyte is concerned. Now, you notice that per the Public Financial Management Act and of course provisions in the SIGA Act, we expect all these entities to regularly submit some particular reports. Normally we write to remind them, and then our officers also visit them to monitor and so on and so forth. That statement from the President was really driving home prompt compliance to these particular requirements. And it's important because we are expected to produce the SOR in August. At least it must be done and completed in August every year, right? Now, the SOR, the source data for the SOR is mainly the audited accounts and sometimes the management accounts, right? Now, what the President is driving at is that these SORs are extremely important for him to be able to know the financial health of our SOEs and the other entities. And to be able to get this thing done, all heads of entities must adhere to the requirements. And basically he's saying that since we are the recipients of these reports, if they don't adhere to the requirement, we should just submit a list of those who do not adhere to the requirements. And then, of course, whatever action he will take, he will decide.
There's a message I've received from Honorable Kujo, Joseph Kujo, I think he used to be a Minister for Public Sector.
Yes, right? Public sector, public enterprises, yes.
He says, my thoughts are that we should ensure that the SOEs are brought up from loss-making positions and list them on the stock market. This is just like what was done in the case of GOIL, GCB Bank, SIC, etc., and prevent Ghana government and government agencies having controlling interest by way of the shareholding structure. PBC, SIC, CPC were listed but failed to perform because of limited ownership ceded to the private sector. And so these companies still held on to the aprons of government. Shutting the SOEs down and collapsing them should not be an option at all. Those that have collapsed already must be disposed of Examples include Bonsa Thai, Aboso Glass Factory, Ghana Consolidated Diamond. ECG, Tor, CPC, Tema Shipyard, Ghanaian Times, etc. should not be shut down, but must be propped up a bit and disposed of their assets, or their assets used to get strategic investors take over ownership, engagement, and operation. So he's saying we should categorize them differently. Mm-hmm. Is it making sense?
It does make sense. I mean, these are issues that have been actively discussed in the office. Look, there is no one-size-fits-all solution to all of them. We can't say that all of them who are making losses, therefore there is one solution that should be applied. Each of them have a context, right? Each of them has a context and have circumstances that need to be evaluated. And even for those that are having negative equity now, if you look at them carefully, with a clear strategic, plan, they can be turned around and they will begin to perform. So there is what the former minister is saying is clearly one of the many options, or some of the many options that are available for, restructuring some of these entities and turning them around to make sure that they deliver some value for the Ghanaian taxpayer.
Will the clamor for political position not put pressure on this government? Because as I talk to you, people have been really looking for positions. Some will call into your show, some will say, Charlie, they are not hearing anything. And there's a lot of pressure on the president to appoint people. Yeah. So is he not going to use one hand to undermine what you're doing by ceding to that pressure?
I think there is no reason to believe that political appointees, appointment by political authority necessarily means that people do not have the requisite skills. What is important, the clamoring will not stop, but what is important is to look through the clamoring properly and see who fits where and who could be deployed where and who could be effective in which entity. And that takes a lot of time, admittedly, but eventually when done very well, you realize that yes, people may be appointed politically, but they also have what it takes to actually turn some of those entities around in whatever position they find themselves in.
Did your report include the hotels? Because I didn't see it in this report. I haven't seen
which hotel in particular?
Labadi Beach and La Palm, because you know they were controversial, involved in the when Smith wanted to dispose of those assets. I don't know whether they are in that report.
Those hotels, in my view, were more like subsidiaries of Smith, right? Okay. They were subsidiaries of Smith, and the untold story, about SIGA is also the specified entities. Right? This is clearly stated in law. There are different legal positions that define what the state interest is and what's, the state's corporations and everything are. Some entities have been fighting that they don't belong to, they don't want to be part of those that SIGA oversights. And my understanding is that Smith was part of them. But I should also say that since the transition, quite a number of the newly appointed CEOs are seeing the picture differently, and I've gladly said that they want to start the process of performance contract negotiations with SIGA so that they can have that oversight so as to help them to achieve
Are you open to listing some SOEs on the stock market if they qualify?
That would be a decision to be made at the level of the minister and the president. If we find data from our analysis that suggests that that would be a viable option, we will not hesitate to recommend it to the president.
Is there a supervising ministry for this? For the oversight of SOEs? Is it the finance ministry?
That's what we are doing.
It's not clear. No, my point is that you are not a ministry.
Yeah.
You are an authority.
Oh, okay. So if
is there a ministry? Is the Ministry of Finance the supervising ministry? Because he was the only minister who spoke there.
It hasn't been clearly specified in the SIGA Act, right? But the Ministry of Finance has been working very well with SIGA. So has been the presidency as well. And so I want to believe that if something needs to be taken to cabinet, for instance, and you need a minister through whom it to be routed, it may have to be routed through the minister.
Because I imagine that because the financials of this company have an implication for the overall finance of government.
Country, yes.
And if they go into debt, some of these debts go to the...
Absolutely.
So you can say that they are the ministry with the most interest.
Absolutely.
They are the ministry with the most interest.
DIC, for instance, I think was sitting at
Ministry of Finance.
And so... And look, the DIC was holding state assets. Some of the entities that was mentioned in the text message you read, Akwitia, Bolsa ties and all of them. They are all huge state assets. These were assets that were built under Kwame Nkrumah that are currently defunct. They are not operating. In fact, one of the things that I face on regular basis is people walking into the office and asking that they should be allowed to go and scrap this, this
old entities that don't exist
they said they hear that we are selling scraps over here. So
they want to go and get.
They want to go and I told them, look, there is nothing like scrap selling over here. We hear ours is, and to that extent, I got a report just 3 days ago that some people are actually actively scrapping the Bolsa tie factory. And so we wrote to National Security and the IGP to say, look, these are state assets under attack. So quickly, help us get people to protect these things. And these things are happening because some Ghanaians have just decided to take the laws into their hands.
More comments. Why do we have multiple agencies in the petroleum sector? Petroleum Commission, National Petroleum Authority, Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. Merge them. This is from Mr. Daku. I don't know what you think about that. He believes that some of the agencies are duplicating
efforts.
If
there is sound reason to merge them, we will recommend their merger. But it's always have to be informed by some scientific analysis and evidence.
Professor Hinson says, what about issues of new public management and the accompanying discipline of a service orientation, etc., etc.? If there's one area the turnaround should focus on, is a better strategic service posture. Your thoughts? One professor to another.
No, look, there is a lot that can be learned from, new public sector management as far as this is concerned. And I think SIGA already enforces some of these things as far as the performance contracts, for instance, are concerned. And new service orientation, why not? For those of them that are actually in the service category, why not? Because the thing is, if Ghana Water, for instance, isn't making profits, but Ghanaians are overly happy about the quality of their service, I'm sure the conversation will be different. But when the quality of the service is poor,
and then you're also making losses,
and it is Ghanaians who are the shareholders of this company, this is more like double jeopardy. You are hitting Ghanaians from every angle, and this is quite concerning.
More comments. Kwabena Ofori says, do we know what will happen to the state banks like Consolidated Bank Ghana? Because don't forget that bank was formed after the financial sector reform, some banks merged and that kind of thing. For it to be making losses is very concerning. Do you know where the finance ministry's mind is on that?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
I don't want to second guess the minister.
You probably need to ask him. Here's another one coming in from Ishmael in Johannesburg. Good evening, Bernard. Interesting discussions on the financial performance of SOEs. The problem is cost overruns of many of these institutions, especially in the energy sector. The number of persons who attend foreign conferences makes absolutely no sense. Until the boards are constituted, I suggest heads of these SOEs submit all foreign travels to SIGA for scrutiny and approval. Already, some CEOs have started enjoying luxurious travels. We see them in South Africa, but at shopping malls and centers. This is Ishmael in Joburg. It's Chukino. Is the seriousness of the president going to lead to such things that certain travels must be approved?
The president has already indicated clearly, in one of the instructions that has been issued, that no government appointee should travel, I believe, business class or first class. Or
yes,
everybody must travel.
No business class.
So the signal has been sent out there. But I think the other thing that hasn't been mentioned really is whether we are at a point, and probably so, where we should actually match compensation to performance, right? Because we are writing to the entities to submit some reports to us, and the reports will give us a sense of, the compensation, the structure of compensation for many of these CEOs and senior management of these entities. You are making losses, right? Your company's or your entity's account is in red, and you come to SIGA to make a presentation, try to give us a projection and everything, and you probably are also projecting a deficit, and yet you are asking for an increment in your compensation, maybe for the CEO or for the management. Are you a Ghanaian? Is that something to really do? So we should be able to have a situation where, going forward, we have a benchmark. This is the standard, right? If you perform better, you attain out surpluses, maybe some additional payment could be made or reward could be given you. But where we have a situation where maybe as a CEO, you are taking big money, fat, allowances and everything, and clearly your entity is really not adding any value to the larger, pool. That is something that should concern us.
More comments. Kofi says, a root cause of the non-performance is the general governance and accountability of these organizations. including appointments of CEOs and board chairs by the presidency. SIGA's ability to crack the whip on non-performance and poor decisions and non-compliance because they appear inadequately resourced. SIGA plays no role in appointments. That is part of the problem. I think he's basically saying you cannot solve a problem that you didn't create. So maybe you should be involved, or your entity should be involved at some point, maybe in board constitution.
So one of the, I think there is there is some iota of validity in what this person is saying, and we have identified this. So we are currently in conversations with senior officials at the presidency to see whether we have written letters to the presidency to draw attention to this, to see whether there is a way in which SIGA could be given some. In fact, some entities already have SIGA sitting on their board. I know that the GIMPA board, for instance, SIGA sits on it. And so there is a thinking that many more of these will eventually help a great deal to rein in, because SIGA cannot be sitting there and maybe some self-serving decisions are being made. And then, but again, also there is a school of thought that says, why should you be oversighting and be on the board, right? Because
then, on the board, you are in governance.
Exactly. You are actively involved in management of that particular space. And then yet you call yourself a regulatory agency or oversighting them at the same time. So again, a fair balance is needed so as to ensure that the ultimate goal of making sure that we inject some sound corporate governance into the operations of the SOEs and the SEs in general.
There's a funny one here. It says most SOEs have about 10 to 16 allowances. Even SIGA has about 15 types of allowances. Is this true?
I don't know, because I'm new in the position. I haven't seen any allowance anywhere yet.
Most SOEs have about 15 allowances.
I'm actively trying to understand how the system operates. I haven't come across that yet. But the question is this, in fact, this position is linked to my earlier submission, which says that compensation should be linked to performance, because unless and until we start linking compensation to performance, people will create allowances every day and add it to whatever their packages are. And if it is the case where we say if you perform, you get this, you will see that performance-driven, performance-driven action and activity will become the norm for many of these SOEs. But when performance is really far at the end, as far as compensation is concerned, whether I make profit or loss, if it is 10,000 or 20,000 that I'm paid, I'm going to be paid the same thing anyways. Then there is no motivation to really perform. I don't know if this makes sense, but that is clearly what the situation will be.
I want my team to put up that slide on the top 10 largest SOEs for us to conclude there, because I think for me that's where the issue is. They have an asset base of 82.2% of the entire SOE portfolio. This is the priority. This should be the priority organizations. Yeah. So I want you to tell me what you are hoping to change by 2026, when in May, the 2025 report has been sent to the president, because that's the target he set for you. Realistically, what can you say? Because only 2 of these guys are making profit.
Yeah.
Ghana Gas and Bui Power. The rest are all making losses.
Almost all these losses, by and large, arose out of, poor governance structure, right? And poor decision-making processes.
Yeah.
What we will do is constantly rein in, on them as far as their decisions are concerned.
Okay.
We need to regularly audit the board decisions, right? We need to also regularly audit their own financials. We need to also check their budgets, their projections, and also make sure that we encourage them to minimize, their cost and their expenditure. And I think over time, that will ultimately help them to begin to kind of move towards breaking even and eventually cross over to, profitability. A lot really resides at the decision-making arena. If the decisions are not sound, you shouldn't expect, profitability. If the decisions are sound, definitely you'll see that it will turn into something that we'll all be very proud of.
We wait to see. We wish you well. It's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. So we wish you well.
Thank you.
Professor Michael Kpessa-Whyte is the DG of the State Interest and Governance Authority, who a few days ago were given the marching orders by the president to ensure that our 175 state entities turn a profit, both social and financial. We we can only wish them well. Thanks for watching tonight's edition of The Point of View. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.